all for being here. I think the first thing is to invite Professor Salvador Borros, our General Director, just to say some few words, please. No, please. He was a little bit shy.
So thank you very much to everybody to be here, because now I think it's very important to begin this new cycle of IQS-Harvard talks. I think that first of all, I like to give a warm welcome to IQS, to our day speaker. There's nothing to say about her because she was a Nobel Prize, I think is laureate, and I think that she's going to give a special focus on one of the subjects that we need more light in now, about this kind of relationships between people and how we can just manage it to have a better world and also in peace with everybody. I also like to thank University Pompeu Fabra, who allows us to share our speaker, and of course to Dr. Comín, who organized this new series of IQS Harvard talks. Please, it's very nice to see the whole auditorium full of people interested in our today's speaker, and please enjoy the discussion and give a warm applause to her.
I will try a brief introduction. I think this introduction should begin with a short story about how we invited Professor Claudia Goldin, and she replied that she had already been invited by our colleagues at Pompeu Fabra. Now, what followed was a remarkable exchange with generous and kind answers, not only from Professor Goldin, but also from Professor Libertad González, the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Business at Pompeu Fabra, as well as the Dean, Professor Teresa Monleau. So their spirit of academic collaboration was inspiring and made this event possible, so thank you so much. Now we are honored, and I should say these formal words, Professor Goldin probably has heard them many times, but we are honored to welcome Professor Goldin, one of the most influential economists of our time. She's the Henry Lee Professor of Economics at Harvard University, where she also holds the Lee and Espelita Professorship of Arts and Sciences. She directs the NBER's development of the American Economy Program for nearly 3 decades, and currently co-directs its gender in the economy group. She has also served as president of the American Economic Association. In 2023, Professor Goldin was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics for her groundbreaking work on women's labor market outcomes. She is only the 3rd woman to receive this honor, and notably, the first to win it solo in her field. Her research has profoundly transformed how we understand the relationship between gender and the economy. She has shown that this isn't just a matter of fairness, it's also about economic efficiency. Professor Goldin has placed women at the heart of economic analysis, revealing how their choices around education, fertility, and participation in the labor market are deeply connected to institutional change and prosperity. Her approach to economic history, especially through the lens of generational cohorts, has been revolutionary. Before her work, many believed that female labor force participation simply increased with economic development. She challenged that view, demonstrating instead a U-shaped pattern in the US labor market. And if we talk about shape, shaped by social and institutional factors. One of her most influential findings is that the gender pay gap is largely driven by the issue of temporal flexibility. Remember that, temporal flexibility, the ability to control when and how long one works. Through her analysis of job selection and occupational choices, discarding some of those factors, she showed that this flexibility, rather than outright discrimination, plays a central role in explaining wage differences between men and women. Her work spans a wide range of topics: the evolution of the female labor force, the gender pay gap, income inequality, education, technological change, immigration, and the impact of birth control on women's lives. What makes her approach unique is her deep commitment to historical analysis. So she interprets the present through the lens of the past, uncovering the roots of today's economic realities. I won't list here the many prestigious editorial boards Professor Goldin has served on, nor the countless awards she has received throughout her career. One, though, deserves special attention for us because it's close to home. In 2019, Professor Goldin was honored in Spain with the prestigious BBVA Frontiers of BBVA Frontiers of Knowledge Award in the category of economics. Now, to conclude, I will refer to some quotations from two of her papers. And the first one comes this paper that she wrote, The Economist as Detective. She begins her essay by saying, and I wanted to add this kind of personal element in a conversation that, gravity, that we are having. Now, she begins her essay by saying, so I have always wanted to be a detective. As a young child in the New York City, I was determined to uncover the secrets of the mummies at the Museum of Natural History. And then she talks about her older sister, Judy, her mother that became an early childhood teacher when she was around 5 years old, typical of many of her cohort, and later was an assistant principal in public school in the Bronx. Also, her father was a middle manager, where he was in charge of data processing. And that reminded me of an interview I think she gave back in 2016 to Freakonomics Radio, that she said, Professor Goldin, that it was very hard for her to breathe in a data vacuum. Now, she also recalls moments, not of formal achievements, but of discovery. She writes, I remember the precise, and I found that fascinating. Now, she said, I remember the precise moment that I found documents at the National Archives containing information on whether firms hired married women. I remember the eurekas I quietly exclaimed when my model or framework took on life and began to talk back to me. And then when she found a nearby closet where she worked with boxes containing thousands of surveys of working women and men in 1951 and their complete work histories back to 1940, she said, I had discovered the treasure for which I had been searching. Among her favorite academic contributions is a paper she wrote in 2002, The Pollution Theory of Discrimination. In it, and I want to share this paper, or the idea of this paper, with you because I think it shows how some themes that we might take lightly, how the depth in which she analyzed that. But in this paper, she argues that certain jobs carry prestige because they are associated with a specific group, typically men. When women enter these roles, the perceived status of the occupation may decline, not due to actual productivity, but in a context of asymmetric information because of social perceptions. She explains that employers often rely on group average rather than individual merit, leading to stereotyping and resistance to integration. Occupations requiring high productivity tend to remain segregated, while those below the median are more likely to be integrated. Now, what's her solution? Credentialization, giving individuals the tools to demonstrate their merit and break down stereotypes. reducing the pollution effect that she got from the idea from Mary Douglas. Her results suggest that discrimination isn't always driven by hostility. That's an important point. Sometimes it's rooted in social signaling and information gaps. By improving transparency and access to education, we can dismantle these barriers and build a more inclusive labor market. Now, in all of this, Professor Goldin reminds us that economics is about models, it is about data, but it's also about people, about history, and the detective work that brings hidden truth to light. Now, just to conclude, I wanted to leave you with a gentle tip for this conversation. In an interview to Time magazine last year, Professor Goldin shared a personal view. She said, "There are two things that I never do. I do not predict the future, and I do not give people advice. So now you know what not to ask." Once again, it's a true honor and privilege to have her here with us today. Thank you so much. Let's see. Let's see. Why the microphones? Yeah, no problem. This one is working, so yeah, we can. Now, how would that work? We thought that half of the time we can have this conversation here to warm up, so and then we are going to open to the public, yeah, for you, yeah, to ask your questions. Now, to start with, I think there's nothing else I can do, which is return this microphone to Libertad, please, for your first question. And then let's hope all the microphones will work and we can have this conversation, yeah? So thank you so much, Libertad. I will pass to you for the first question, yeah? So let's see whether we can have this conversation.
Thank you very much, Flavio, for organizing this very nice event and conversation with Claudia. So I think I'll take this opportunity to ask Claudia about some of her most recent work. I think her recent work sheds light on two of the most important kind of social challenges that many countries, societies face today. One is, gender inequalities in labor market outcomes or economic outcomes more broadly, and the second one is low and falling fertility rates. So my first question to Claudia is, can you tell us a little bit about how you see the connection between women's improved economic opportunities in the past, let's say, 50 years and low fertility rates? What is women's economic, so are women's improved economic opportunities driving fertility down, and what are the mechanisms? And this, of course, relates to some of your most recent papers.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming here. Thank you very, very much for the summary. After you gave that summary, I thought, okay, it's all over. You did it all. You said it all. So this is a very, very good question. So there's a tremendous amount of discussion. So I'm from the United States, and so there's a lot of discussion in the U.S. about women and birth rates and families and personal responsibilities, and much of it is a statement about a certain type of conservatism. Okay, as an economist, I think of conservatism as Milton Friedman type economic conservatism. But this conservatism is a social conservatism, is what I think of as a William Buckley conservatism. And interestingly, in the US today, the social conservatism is not going along with the economic conservatism. I'm hoping for economic conservatism. But somehow the libertarian and economic conservatism is not has not risen up as much as social conservatism has. And social conservatism is a little confusing because in some sense social conservatism is very good. And the reason that we think of it as very good is because everything in civilization, in modern civilization, in some sense, has been designed so that we get around the free rider problem. The free rider problem is everywhere. And what we would like to do is uplift the family. And so the family is the central building block of civilization. And so the idea is that we make certain that the family is preserved. And if you think about just about every religion in the world, every belief system, Confucianism, for example, every one of these has been to make certain that the family remains. And one way in which you do that is you begin with there is a man and a woman. Okay, so this is the bedrock of social conservatism as it has been stated in the US. There is a man and a woman. So if there's only a man and a woman, let us just say that we have the trans population, the queer population is on the outs. So that sort of explains part of that. So there is a man and a woman, and so the man is strong, the woman is weak. Every single thing that you think about in social norms is there, and that is sort of social conservatism. And part of that is so that we propagate the population. And so this group then has looked at sort of declining fertility as being a statement about something extremely bad, okay? And that gets talked about a tremendous amount today. But I'll give you a couple of facts. Fertility in the US, total fertility rates, have been below 2.1, which is sort of the magic number for reproducing the existing population, have been below that since the 1970s. For college-educated women, they have been so low, they were so low in the 1970s and the 1980s that they were lower than the total fertility rate is for the US today. Number two, total fertility rates have been low for almost all of the OECD countries for at least 40 years, okay? The one country that it hasn't been below 2.1 is Israel, okay? But all other 38 OECD countries, that's number two. Number three is that total fertility rates have been declining in every country in the world, that with maybe 2 or 3 exceptions in the last 10, 20 years. And that also includes sub-Saharan Africa, which has very high fertility, but it's still sort of going down. Total fertility in the UAE is exactly the same as it is in baby-scarce Japan today. That's 1.2. That's the UAE. Total fertility in Saudi is about 2.3, and it's been dropping for a very long time. So in other words, total fertility rates have been declining for a very long time. They've been declining all over the world. So we should ask 2 questions. Number one, if that's the case, we would think that there would be some commonality of cause. It seems impossible to have something happening all over and not have some commonality. But on the other hand, I find it difficult to find true commonality across all these countries. So we will have some commonality, and that commonality will be that across these countries, in every one of these countries, women have become more autonomous individuals and have found a range of freedoms in terms of their education and in terms of their employment, in terms of their ability to create a better life, not just for their families, but for themselves or the other way around, okay? So the two big issues to address is what is the commonality? And the second one is, particularly in the US today, why are we talking about this now? If this has been going on for so long, why suddenly are we talking about this now? So let me end this long discussion about that and say that the real issue to discuss has to do with women and their newfound in certain places and old-found in other places ability to be more autonomous individuals and to have the ability to achieve everything that men have achieved themselves, to have that ability themselves, both for their family and for themselves. Thanks.
Then let me see this.
On the top.
On the top.
Yeah.
So let me try to use that, and then perhaps invite Professor Mihai Borsi, macroeconomist here who does a lot of research on social issues as well.
Thank you, Flavio. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Flavio, and thank you, Claudia. Just to follow up a little bit on what you just said, you have a recent publication from 2025 May, right? And personally, I love the title as a macroeconomist and a father of two. It's called Babies and the Macroeconomy. Could you elaborate a little bit on the relationship between the growth experience of these different countries and the declining fertility rates? And just to add, well, you mentioned a lot of numbers already, but Spain is even worse. Apparently, as of 2023, the fertility rate stands at 1.12, I believe, which is basically the second worst in the EU, or second lowest.
Well, why do you say
lowest,
worse?
Sorry, yeah, I corrected myself. Right? The second lowest after Malta with 106. That's pretty much the half of the magic number, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just go back a bit in history, and then we'll talk about Spain and Korea and Italy and Greece, Portugal, and Japan. Okay. So in 1968, a book was published by a husband-wife team, the Ehrlichs, although the book is often referred to as Paul Ehrlich's book. It has two authors. It's a child with two parents. And it was called The Population Bomb. And in that book, remember it's published in 1968, in that book they write, in the 1970s and the 1980s, hundreds of millions of people will die. They will die of starvation. So overpopulation, the population bomb, was the big issue of that moment. And it remained the big issue. And in fact, some people have said to me when I ask, why have we only figured out that populations have had lower fertility over time now? The answer is because they're still in the world of the population bomb, which is sort of interesting. I find that hard to believe. I think there's something else going on. But let me address the question. So the question has to do with a subset of the questions that I've been raising, which is, why has population fallen more in certain countries than in others? So if we look over the past, let's say 30 years at countries in the OECD, what we would see there, and a couple of other countries, what we would see there is that there are a host of countries that had incredibly high fertility rates. That includes places like Italy, Spain, and Korea, if we go back to the 1960s, for example, very, very high rates, and even through the 70s. And then those countries and much of Europe begin to decline to levels at around 2, okay? And then a bunch of countries, including the US, Sweden, Britain, France, remain at around 1.8, 1.7 or so. And the countries that I just listed just drop like a rock. And they become what we call lowest of low fertility. And so the question that I raised in this paper, which I call Babies in the Macroeconomy, I was asked to deliver a paper to the European Central Bank. And that was 2 Septembers ago, okay? And I figured, what could I do to entertain people who were talking about interest rates? I said I could talk about fertility. Because after all, macroeconomics, every model has in it the rate of change of population. So I figured, I'll talk about the rate of change. No one else is talking about the rate of change of population. I will talk about the rate of change of population. And I figured that I would make it a fun statement by calling it babies. Because generally in the European Central Bank, no one talks about babies. So it began with a whole bunch of babies that were a group of multiracial, multi-ethnic babies of the world. And I loved the picture, and they were just the cutest, most wonderful babies. Except then someone told me they were all AI drawn. I can't believe it. They're so cute. Okay. Back to why certain countries are different than others. So the idea in this paper is that if you have countries that are growing at a reasonably rapid clip, but a steady rate, then your parents and you are not that much different. And your grandparents and your parents and you are different, but not that much different. But if you're in a country like Korea is the best example, in which your parents migrated from a rural area, in which your parents have a level of education that is so low that no one in your generation would possibly have that level, then you and your parents and you and your grandparents are very, very different. In that sort of world, the women in the younger generation have been given freedoms that are enormous. The men have been given some freedoms, but if they go along with the new world, they will lose something. And so they hold on to the traditions of the past. And it becomes more of a mismatch between what they are willing to give and what women require to be part of modernity. And under those conditions, you have much lower levels of fertility. And that was the point of that paper.
Very good, thank you. Now, for the sequence, and sorry, it seems very formal, yeah, but may I invite our colleague here, Professor of Tourism and Leadership, Daniela Front, for a question, please.
Thank you very much. In your studies, you highlight that the motherhood penalty remains a major source of the gender pay gap. And in view of the challenges of care, we're talking about now low fertility, and we have in Europe a high longevity expectations. So we will have elderly care. It's already there, but more to come. So how should we like in modern economies, rethink the care role, both paid and unpaid, to balance productivity and equality. Do you see any successful models that we could scale or adapt?
Well, as an economist, we always deal in the world of scarcity. We never have enough of anything, okay? So we now see that we have economies that are, and populations that are aging. In some sense, it's a very good thing, because aging comes possibly from two factors. One is that we have fewer younger people. Maybe that's not good, but it means that those people and everyone alive is living longer, and that's a really good thing. So in fact, it's my sense, and I think it's the sense of lots of people, that the way in which we produce notions of dependency rates is wrong. That people who are 65 are highly productive and perhaps shouldn't be retiring, and that our retirement systems were built some time ago when to be 65 is to have not that many more years left. And so it's sort of a problem of policy that you make promises to individuals when they're 30, and then in fact they become sort of healthier and more productive because we're doing a good thing. And then when they're 65, we say to them, you know what? You should retire when you're like 67. And they go, no, and they go out on strike in France, for example, or in Germany, okay? And it's very, very hard to take away. So part of the problem that we have is that we haven't fully woken up to the fact that we do not necessarily have a population that is both aging, in bad health, and in as much need of care as it once was. That does not reduce the fact that there is still part of the population in need of care. And certainly if we only had a population of elderly people, we would have a population in which we would say care is now increasingly scarce. But that is the way I would think about it. Number one, people are healthier, people should work longer, people should care for themselves, and I don't think we have as big a problem as we've made it out to be.
Oh, please, yes.
Just to add or complement this question, well, I have to forget about most of my questions because I was about to ask for advice and future predictions. But so related to what you just said on the other side of the coin, if we are extending the retirement age in several countries, right, including China and others, this combined with the most recent migratory patterns, right? We are saying goodbye from our parents, or if we are, our parents, and at the same time, if we are not, then they are still working. So you talk a lot about the parenthood effect in your works, right? Can we now talk about something like a grandparent effect? That would be reshaping, again, our willingness to have children, or possibilities?
That's possible. In fact, I was thinking that I haven't seen a good piece of work, and someone here is going to say, I've written it, and I hope you have. And then you can send it to me. That tells me just how much time is being given by grandparents to grandchildren in various periods of history, okay? And I'm not certain what that is, but I'm not certain that that's necessary. I mean, one of the major changes over time in the household in general has been marketization of just about everything, okay? So, and also the mechanization of everything. So we don't do our own laundry by hand, okay, and we don't send it out to have someone else do it. We have these machines, and probably what another interesting thing is that we change what we consider to be appropriate dress. We do not iron things. I don't know if anyone here irons, but generally we don't iron. I always like when I go to a hotel and there's an iron in the closet. I'd like to know when the last person was who used that iron. I have one at home that's pretty dusty, okay?
I think men iron their shirts, no?
No, men send their shirts out to be ironed, but we can look around and see how many people are ironing their shirts. So I certainly understand that it would always be nice for every single one of you who has a child or is thinking about having a child, the idea of having your wonderful parents take care of that child is sort of a great idea. Throw it out. It's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen for a lot of reasons, and it's not going to be such a bad thing if it doesn't happen. Okay.
Very good. So may I invite now Philippos Maraziotis. He has just joined our department coming from New York, the old York, not New York. Yeah, and please, welcome.
Thank you very much, Flavio. Thank you very much, Claudia. I will go back to fertility, to questions regarding fertility, and to the term mismatching that you referred to, also to your paper, the downside of fertility. Could you please share with us some more insights about this mismatching? Is this related to time used at home? Is that related to career prospects? Can we say that there is a different calculation of the opportunity costs of having a kid between men and women nowadays? And to link that, second question, there is a public debate. One side says that the declining fertility is the price the society pays for more gender equality. And there is another viewpoint which says that actually the countries with better or higher fertility rates are countries with more gender equality. So where do you stand in that
Right.
public debate?
Okay. So a follow-up paper to the one that was just referred to, Babies in the Macroeconomy, is called The Downside of Fertility. Okay. And that was written for, so I was also invited, so the first one was for the European Central Bank, and the second one was for the August Jackson Hole meetings of the Federal Reserve of Bank of the United States. Okay, so in both cases, I was trying to uplift these meetings. But the Jackson Hole meetings, some of you may have seen, were possibly going to be difficult meetings, and they were a little difficult because at that time, the president of my country wanted to control interest rates somehow and lower them, and so he wanted to fire one of the members of the Board of Governors. And so those were the meetings at which he, from the outside, started to attack the board. So they were somewhat difficult. So my paper was a nice little light moment, okay. But it isn't very light at all because, as was just noted, the underlying part of that paper, which is similar to Babies in the Macroeconomy, is to think about a model in which women are making decisions about whether to invest in their education and whether to get married and to have kids. So that is the set of possibilities. Okay, so there's it's a very, very simple model in which every man, so this is also a model in which it's a conservative model in which there's one man, in which couples are a man and a woman. And so every man has a probability of either being, he has the potential to be a good dad, to give, when he has a baby, he will take care of that child equally with the mother, or he is going to be a dud. So it's dads or duds, and that would be a 0. And so there's some probability. So let's say that the probability of any guy being a good dad is really, really, really low. Then women who have the ability to have careers and go to college, for example, know that if they made that investment and then they had a child, they would have the care of that child 100%. And so the investment would be worthless, okay? So that would be a model in which women would invest in their education or have kids. So that's sort of career or family. But as that probability gets higher and higher, then women will say, well, I'll take the chance, I'll invest in my education, and I will then sort of randomly select a guy, and if he turns out to be a dad, then I will have sort of the best of both worlds. And so it's the simplest type of model, but it's a model in which you can see sort of the tensions here and the role of policy, which I think is what you've raised, which is that if governments have a commitment to support young families through transfers and through subsidization of childcare at a very, very young age, then even if she reaches out and selects a random guy and he turns out to be a dud, the state essentially is picking up some of the and I use the word burden, but of course taking care of a child is a great joy. So the state provides some of the, let's call it just care, okay, rather than the burden. And so that's why it may be the case that certain countries with greater gender balance are the ones that have a greater ability to have higher fertility, okay? And there are other implications. Sometimes a very, very simple economic model goes a real long way for you to, models should talk back to you. Models are not just statements about what you're estimating. Models should be, in some sense, very simple notions of what you're trying to explain. And the model then starts talking back to you about why you should sort of look for, okay? And in this case, one of the interesting problems here is the problem of the lack of an enforceable contract. Because in this model, you might select a mate and the two of you decide, well, this is the life we would like to lead together, but there's nothing in it, there's nothing in the contracts that means that you as a woman make your investment, have the child, and then you say, hey, but you said, remember when we said our vows? Remember that wonderful day when our parents were standing around and all of our friends, and you said that we would have a 50-50 relationship. Well, there's really nothing that is an enforceable contract.
Claudia, may I follow up
please,
on that
I was going
quickly?
to ask anyway.
So following up on these questions, I would like you to talk a little bit more about the side of men. We've talked, I guess, a bit more about changes in women's lives and how women have become more autonomous and more able to make decisions about, invest in their own education and so on. And in your last paper, in this paper, the downside of fertility, you have this idea that, if there are more, let's say, good dads out there, then women would be more inclined to have children because they know that that their partner is going to to share the joy and burden of the children. But of course, now I want to think more about the side of men, right? So, as you said earlier, men kind of benefit from upholding traditions. So, where are these good dads going to come from? Like, what is the incentive for men to, to generously, because of course it's costly to invest in childcare if you think about your own, economic opportunities, economic independence. And let's say that today's men, they see a world where women, they've invested in their careers and they expect from a partner that they're going to contribute to childcare and so on. So perhaps cooperative dads are going to make women more likely to want more children, but dads who know that they're going to be expected to, invest in their children, maybe they will not want to have children now. So, I mean, these cooperative dads, I guess I'm just saying the one thing that would make women more inclined to have more children is the same thing that will make men less inclined to want more children. I essentially now nobody wants to have more children.
Well, I mean, there has to be some underlying desire. If there's no underlying desire, then of course we would say, why does anyone have, what are we all doing here? So we have to accept that there's some underlying desire to have children. First of all, they're really cute. They're just adorable, and maybe they will grow up to be nice people. And okay, so I think we just have to. If we don't accept that, Libertad, there's nothing to talk about. Okay, but let's just talk about men, and let's talk about. I think what we're going to see in this conversation, that maybe it's not so much about men, but about the labor market. Okay, and I've sort of skipped over that. Now you've sort of dragged me back into an issue that I raised in the book that I wrote, Career and Family. Okay. And the problem here is, and I'll put it in just a simple mathematical way, and then we'll talk about what I mean. The problem here is non-convexities in the earnings of individuals with regard to time and perhaps devotion to the job, okay? And so the notion here, I called it greedy work, okay? So if there is an abundance of greedy work, particularly for people like all the people here who are investing hard in their education, be it in chemistry or physics or engineering or finance or economics or any field at all, okay? A client-facing field, a non-client-facing field. If work is extremely greedy, it means that the more time you put in, the more you're going to get back, okay? If you have a client-facing job and you get a call at, an email at 12 at night that tells you to jump, you jump, okay? If you're off on vacation, wherever it is that you might go on vacation, you come back, okay? Now, that is, an extremely greedy world. And if you have kids, or if you have any type of family care responsibility, you can't jump like that, okay? And so therefore, if we have couples, and it's a very good question, why in fact God created the world so that we have couples and not 3 things or 4 things, which we can discuss, which is really sort of fun. So if we have couples, 2 people that produce a child or 2 children or 3, someone has to take care of them, even if we have a lot of marketization of that. There always has to be someone who really cares, who is there. And under those circumstances, only one parent could have the greedy job, and one parent has the more flexible job, the job for which you can, you don't have to jump, you have to make certain that you can take the call from the nurse in the school. It means that you have to be there when the kid is anxious about something. You have to be there to tell the caretaker exactly how the potato should be mashed that the kid will eat, okay? So in some sense, behind some of this reluctance of men to step up to the plate is the fact that the labor market penalizes that sort of reluctance, okay? Am I making funny noises here?
That's mine.
Oh, yours?
Yeah.
We'll shut it off. Okay. We've had certain small interference. Okay. And so the question then, I know if I stopped here, Libertad would say, okay, what should we do about it? Okay. So let me answer it because she will be very nervous about asking that question because I don't do policy and I don't tell people what to do. But in fact, it's a very, very simple thing to think about. In a job that's a greedy job, if you had an individual who was an extremely good substitute for you, not perfect, no one's going to be perfect for you, okay, but a very good substitute, then if you had a job that was relatively greedy and you were told you have to jump, but you also know that you had to be there for the kids, you can just hand it off, seamlessly hand it off to an individual who would be almost as good as you. That gets rid of greedy work entirely. It gets rid of the non-convexities here, okay? So the non-linearities, I'm sorry. So it creates from a world in which payment is convex, a world in which it's linear, in which every hour is equal to the same amount. Okay, so it means that it doesn't matter if you work 40 hours a week or 80 hours a week, you get the same per hour. That would be the linear world. So in some sense, the beauty of all of this is that we started with the issue of fertility. I'm still making, I know it's not you, it's someone else. It doesn't matter. If no one out there can hear it, I can put up with static in my head. Okay. So we started out with declining fertility, that fertility has been declining for a long time, that it may be something that's important. It may be that the stability of society, of civilization, is really dependent upon there being couples and children, and how can we make things better. We talked about the role of public policy, but it may also be that there is an extremely important role of private enterprise and of a sense that jobs should be less greedy and that firms have an incentive to work on reducing that, because if they don't reduce it, we as workers become more and more expensive. And the more men and women say to their employers, I have a life too, it means that they have to find ways of getting around the greediness. Yeah.
Very good. Now, just aware. it's fine. I'm just aware of the time, so I'm going to ask you if possible, yeah, because I understand you have many questions too. But then if we can open to the questions to the public, we have to finish. We have 30 minutes now for questions, so it should be fine. Yeah, if you have no questions, they have questions. So, but if people
I'm sure
want
they have
to,
questions.
wow.
A whole bunch of questions.
Very good. So I can see some 4 hands here. So I think they are good and bad news. Let's see whether this microphone was. I'm going to ask now the assistance of Ima and Gloria, but I think this microphone should work. Let's see whether. If not, yeah, we can use this.
That sounds good.
Oh, now. So if you could please, I think there are a couple of people there. Yeah, you as well. So, and if you can put some brief questions, please.
Hello. All right. Please let me give a brief introduction. My name is Zhou Weiyang, and I am the new PhD first-year candidates in IQS Management School. Thanks for respect for Professor Goldin to giving us this inspiring sharing. And as for the theory of the greedy work, you have reviewed that the effect of the motherhood penalty. So may I ask a question that what do you think of whether the technology development, especially the artificial intelligence, especially the OpenAI in America and the DeepSeek in China, whether it put us into the risk that the technological development transform such the penalty into a broader one as the adaptation penalty by punishing those people who fail to adapt to the new technologies in the future? Thank you.
Sure. So new technologies have historically, we can go way back in time. There have been new technologies for a long time, okay? And new technologies bring with them promise of increasing productivity, but we also know that there are certain individuals who might not be able to use or who don't want to use. Remember, there were these people called Luddites. They didn't want to use new technologies. And so there are always, so new technologies always have winners and losers, okay? And sometimes the losers are in fact the ones who can use the new technologies and do use the new technologies, okay? So it's an extremely good question, and one that is sort of in the future. I mean, we have some pretty good information about some of the uses of AI today that are incredibly beneficial. For example, the reading of X-rays, the reading of images, okay? And we know that these can be read much better and much more effectively. Well, that means that certain individuals who really had the capacity, you know, they are physicians who are reading these, are going to be displaced. But no, maybe they're not going to be displaced. Maybe the really routine stuff that they always hated to do is going to be displaced, and they're going to be reading X-rays for the most difficult cases, let's say in fetuses or in cases in which an individual has a tumor, for example. So in fact, we're not certain exactly which way it's going to go. Yeah. And I also want to say one funny thing, okay? I finished writing my book the book is published in 2021. Okay, 2021. That's not that long ago. At that time, and I believe I have in the book AI, okay? It stood for artificial insemination. Okay. That was the technology that it stood for. Okay. So times have changed.
Thank you, Claudia. Lydia Ferrer from the Institute for Economic Analysis. So I like your idea of moving from a convex world to a linear world in pay. I know you don't like giving advice, so I'm not going to ask you how to move from one world to the other.
Well, I just told you how.
Well, yeah, so now let's imagine that we are in a linear world, okay? Do you think that hours of paid work, of unpaid work, are going to be equally distributed between men and women so that women can devote as much time as they want to work, assuming or expecting that men are going to take their share
It's
of...
a very, very good question. So I just said that there are duds and there are dads and there are individuals. We were getting to the question about why people have children at all. So if an individual has gains no pleasures from being with his own children, then he's a dud. So that's it. So if we know that, that's it. So all I was saying is that we can get around the technological problems. We're not getting around the problems of individuals' preferences, okay? We can't, like, say to someone, you should want to have children. Look how cute they are. Okay? Maybe we don't want those people to have children, okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Claudia, for your word, for your insights. I'm Daniel, I'm economist and I'm environmental expert. And from an environmental perspective, I love declining fertility rates because they could help us fighting the climate crisis. And I would love to know what's your view on it.
Yeah, okay. So here's another interesting point. So there are lots of people who will say to me, "What is the optimal rate of population growth? Okay, and how can we get it back to above 2, 2.1, whatever it is?" And my response to them is, if you somehow think that the optimal rate of population growth today in the world, and the rate in the world right now is a little bit above 2, okay? If you think that it should be somewhere above 2, then you are saying that the number of people in the world today is optimal, okay? Because that would be the number so that you have you don't have a declining number of people in the world. The amount of hubris that it takes to say that, I think, is enormous. I can't. So I don't have a model in my head, and I don't think anyone does, in which we know what the optimal rate of, not rate of population change, but the optimal number of people. And so now I am so happy that I have met an environmental expert, because that's your job.
Hi, I'm Eva Villamas. I'm here.
Okay, good.
I'm economist actually, and I work in the area of data and diversity, so I'm a huge fan of you. Obviously, everything we do, is based in your papers. A question. We didn't talk too much about cohorts, and that's part of, all the papers that you do. I mean, right now, Spain is one of the countries with more public regulations actually to push to actually decrease, the gender gap. So we have lots of policies here. But in the last 20 years, not many things change. Actually, we are seeing a decline. Increase of gender gap, decrease of women in, management positions. So it is maybe a matter of waiting for the next cohort of women that are now maybe in earlier stage career that will be the ones leading organizations and will go to this linear model that you're talking about? Because again, things are not changing with public.
So I understand your frustration, but I don't know exactly why. So in other words, let's say that we wanted more women to be the CEOs of corporations or the run for mayor of the many wonderful cities there are in Spain. And then we see that we don't get that, or we have mandates and that we can't really find the individuals we want. Then we have to ask why, and it may be that we're led back to the same exact issues that we're discussing, that those individuals have a multiplicity of things that give them great happiness, and that they're unwilling to make the trade-offs that even, being told that they have a leg up in these corporations or in these policy positions, that it's just not worth doing that. So I don't think that we've gotten to the basic causes of that, okay? And once again, it may go back to the dads and the duds, yeah.
There are two young people, I think one here and one over there, so after that it goes to you, please.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned that if for one reason or another, one of the partners in a couple does not participate in the childcare, the state should intervene and in some way...
Oh, I don't think I have ever used the word should.
Can, yes. Do you support, or what are your thoughts and opinions on the policies in places like Hungary, where women have lower interest rates depending on how many children they have, and could be given loans with almost like, I think, 0 interest rate?
Well, that's just a subsidy. I mean, I don't care if they have interest rates with loans with low interest rates, or they're given an amount of cash. They're being paid to have kids, right? As I understand what you're saying. And I think it's perfectly fine for a society to want to subsidize, quote, young people, that is mothers and fathers, okay, through public education, kindergartens, preschools, childcare. That is a policy that I think has been shown in the Nordic countries to have some bite, not just in terms of fertility, but in terms of individual happiness, that individuals who are young would like to do something but don't have the resources because they're young. So in an overlapping generations model of an economy, okay, individuals when they're older get taxed to support younger people just as they were supported when they were younger, okay? So now we can also talk about authoritarian regimes. Authoritarian regimes throughout history have tried to increase the birth rate, okay? And they've done it in sort of ways of subsidization. They've done it, in Romania overnight. Abortion was made illegal, and we had many babies in orphanages. So it's often done in ways that are not very good. Okay, so I'm much rather talk about countries that are not authoritarian countries in terms of the birth rate, and that gets back to my original point about social conservatism. Yeah.
Okay. Well, first off, it's an honor to have you here, Ms. Goldin. My name is Rocco Tony. I'm a first-year grade student of international business. And my question for you was going to be if you could please give us some insight of the impact of immigration on economics and also fertility rates. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So, in fact, immigration was, Libertad gave me, in some sense, a way of segueing into immigration, and I didn't, so I'm glad that you mentioned that. So, on the one hand, immigration has, so there are many different ways in which we can think about immigration and population. So immigrants are members of the population. They come into a country as adults, and so individuals don't have to invest in them. They're, in some sense, very cheap. in terms of public policy, okay? They often have higher birth rates than the native-born population, and they replenish the what is often viewed as jobs that the native population would like to have, but doesn't have enough population to support. Okay, so on the one hand, people and given various environmental problems, we are going to have even more environmental refugees around. Okay, so that's a statement. So the first statement is we're going to have more of those around that are going to want to get into countries like Spain, like the United States, like Sweden, like France, okay? And they're going to have various benefits. On the other hand, we have social conservatives that around the world who are closing doors and saying, France for the French people, Sweden for the Swedish people, and of course America is for who knows who, for the American people, but not all American people. Okay, so it's cutting both ways, and it becomes this is really, I think, the big policy issue of our time right now, bigger and bigger because of the environmental refugees, bigger and bigger because there's pressure within various countries, Japan, for example, Korea, to bring in more immigrants to replace the fact that the native population isn't increasing as fast, right?
Yeah. Oh, we have two questions.
Thank you. Roberto Cantoni, IQS from here.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I talk to some colleagues of mine and we mention population increase and decrease, I feel, when I ask them, why are we so scared of population decrease? And they're like, well, because if you don't have, if the population decreases, then your retirement pension cannot be paid. And a lot of people's retirement pensions cannot be paid. Okay, so is it only that? Or is it also something else that we are scared of if we think of population degrowth? If you think at some point the human population will just go down and this will be a trend, and at some point it will be less and less and fewer. So in terms of ecosystem, it's not a big deal, right? Oh, probably it's even better, but I guess there are other reasons why we are so scared of this, are we? Thanks.
I don't know. What I said before was that if you believe that at this moment you do not want population to go down, then you believe that the number of people around in the world today is optimal. And it just takes a tremendous amount of hubris to even say that, okay? So, no, I had a call from a journalist the other day who thought that he was asking a perfectly reasonable question. And he said to me, there are so many of the most inventive and innovative countries in the world that are suffering from population decline today. Comment on that. And I just ripped it apart, okay? First of all, there aren't that many countries right now that do have population decline. I think Japan is one, but I don't know if there are any others, okay? So population decline is not yet here, but I don't fear population decline. I go back to 1968 and the population bomb. I feared, and many people feared, I can't say that in 1968 I had any fears about this, but thinking about it, I certainly far more fear famine and individuals who are dying then I fear population decrease. Yeah. Getting to just, I think that you began the question with how are we going to pay for X, Y, and Z. It just so happens that we set up systems that were predicated on some, demographics that aren't necessarily there. We just reset up these systems, okay? So there are lots of ways of doing that.
Claudia, so nice to meet you in person. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Roberta Giannini. I am a business professor. I work for several schools all over Barcelona. I here for IQS as well. And I think that one topic that people missed discussing is about culture, right? Because when you were talking about greedy jobs, I only could possibly think about the US scenario, where really this is hard working for everybody. They don't have pension, they don't have vacant time, and work is really about life and life work and the mixture, and that's how it is. And I saw that in Asia as well, because I also have a professional experience in Asia. The same works in Asia, but here in Europe things are a little bit different. We have laws, for example, that tell us that we cannot send emails out office time and so on. So I wouldn't say that
we actually have that too.
Yeah, you do?
Yeah, every
but
now and then when I
that's
send
the
an
point.
email, it comes back and it says something about, it routinely says, I apologize for sending this at an inconvenient time to you.
Yeah, so that's the
It's
point.
absurd, okay.
Do you think that when it comes to cultural norms or eventually cultural shifts, would be something helpful about trying to minimize those greedy jobs? So how culture could be a topic, an important topic to be discussed, so we can move on with your idea of having more linear, flexible jobs in society in general. Thank you very much.
Right. It's a very, very good question, and one that we have to think hard about, because the most economic models begin with the notion that individuals have preferences. And the issue of culture is that you may think you have your own preferences, but really you have adopted something that you've taken from your parents, or there may be traditions and belief systems, or this other thing called social norms, which requires arbiters to say, oh, you're doing this wrong, or you're doing that wrong, etc. So it's a very good question as to we generally don't say that an individual's preferences are good or bad, okay? We just say that those are their preferences. I may prefer apples to pears, you may prefer pears to apples, but that isn't good or bad, okay? However, you've raised an important issue that I think is one of the interesting aspects of research, which is under what conditions are there externalities? Under what conditions is one type of preferences, one type of culture better than others? I just want to say one other thing about my country, which is the United States. It's still my country, okay? Which is that in the 1830s, long ago, many Europeans came to America and wrote about America. I don't know why they picked 1830 or so to do that, but the one of those that we read and we think about the most is the great Tocqueville. Okay, and Tocqueville came to America with another individual named Auguste Beaumont to study the American prison system. That's what he was paid to do. But he was very, very smart and very energetic and very perceptive. And he went around trying to figure out who were these people, these Americans. They were very different from those he knew in Europe, the French. And one of the things that he said in the book essentially was that, and I'll translate it into our language, he said in 1832, Americans are workaholics, okay? But the reason that they were, he also explained why they were workaholics. And they were workaholics because every moment that they worked, they received the output from that, okay? That it was not taken away, that they could own the land, that they could own the business. And it was really the notion of freedoms, okay? So this notion that Americans are workaholics goes far back, and it has extremely good roots to it, okay?
Now, we have to come to the end, and then I think there's only time for two quick questions. I saw our colleague Paola is with the microphone, and then Mihai also mentioned that his students wanted him to ask a question. So very quickly, please.
Yeah, it's a follow-up of the last question. Thank you for being here. And how we as educators can contribute to, because probably if we ask our students, as any other student in a business school, they believe on the idea of the greedy jobs. And that is partly why, or the reasons behind joining a business school to study. So how can we, as professors, contribute to this, the denaturalization? I'm a sociologist. So how can contribute to denaturalize this idea that the greedy job is what is good for us as society, and move towards this. I agree with the linear model totally, so I think it's better, and that is the society where I want to live and where I want my children to live.
Right.
So how can we?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because in fact, many of the jobs that are being, the students at IQS are going to have are not very greedy jobs. There may be high-paying jobs. There may be jobs that are very satisfying. They may be jobs that contribute enormously to the innovation of the economy, okay? But in fact, many of the jobs in the STEM are not greedy, and the reason is that they're not client-facing jobs. They're jobs in which individuals are highly skilled, but pretty good substitutes for each other, okay? I have a chapter of my book called The Lawyer and the Pharmacist, which gets to the notion about why, I mean, pharmacists are in the US are very well trained, very highly paid, and yet they're very, very good substitutes for each other. And it's also the case in programmers, for example, are very good substitutes for each other. So being a good substitute, having a good substitute, does not mean that you've commodified your position at all, okay? So I think it's sort of thinking in those ways. How can we take the more client-facing jobs and make them jobs in which individuals are better substitutes for each other? It may be that we reduce the effectiveness of the client-facing part of it, okay? But there are, economics teaches us that there are trade-offs. That's just one of the trade-offs. Thanks.
Thank you. Mihai, please.
All right, so we had a small in-class activity the other day with our wonderful second-year international business students, and among others, we thought that we would ask them to think about a question that we could ask from you. Of course, we have 33 students approximately, so we didn't bring 33 questions, but we asked them to vote for the best or the most exciting one. I think, Daniela, you have it jotted down. Perhaps you can read it. So this is a question by the winner, Kim Francis, right? Congrats, and let me just say that for me it's a bit pessimistic, so maybe if you could, as a concluding point, turn it into something more optimistic, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so here goes the student question. What do you think is the major expectation that we, as young people, have about work or education that is likely to prove wrong or disappointing?
My goodness. Okay. I think what we should all have as our expectation is that we have within us some passions. They can be personal, they can involve people, they can involve ideas, and that we would like them at some point to be expressed. We would like to have some satisfaction, okay? And I think that the fear is that that won't happen. And I think that that I know my own students look too much into the future, much too much. If I think back in my own life and where I am today, I have never done more than taken one step at a time, okay? And to think that every day is a new day, and a new day to be a detective. That's what I always wanted to be, and that's what I am. And when you are a detective, remember that there is a problem, and you want to solve it. It's not necessarily a death. It's not necessarily a murder. It's a question, and you would like to solve it. A detective is only a detective if that individual has some internal belief that this could be solved. If it could never be solved, then you would never be a detective. So start every day as a detective and just take that one step at a time.
Very good. So before we finish, I simply want to mention that there was a lot of work in preparing for the session, and I think I want to thank the professors here, because one opportunity that we explored, we got your ideas and your articles and your books to our students. So to thank not simply the people you can see, but I think Francisco Martori is here, and then also Joaquin is there as well. So thank you so much, for all the work. And yesterday, I was trying to explain to my wife, who is here, that part of your exciting work was detecting labor market statistics, scrutinizing how women were actually part of it. And then why that? Because she helped us in getting 2 small presents for you. So I have here the 2 small presents, and they had to be Gaudí stuff, of course. You would not expect Libertad as well. So, and with that, thank you all very much. Thank Gloria and Ima as well, who supported that. And we have people working. It doesn't seem so, but yeah, they are over there, a little bit hidden as well. So thank you so very much. I know that that was memorable and very inspiring for all of us. Thank you so much.